Welcome to the beta release of the energy sharing project. You can find the beta release on our GitHub page under the releases tab, and this is beta release 1. This one's just for Mac OS, and any Windows users I'm happy to individually set you up. But over the next few release cycles we will have a really nice Windows version that works exactly the same. Right, so you can download the zip file of the energy sharing program from this website, and there are a couple of little things that you'll need to do before you run the program. Once you've downloaded it, energy sharing will appear in your downloads folder. If we double click the zip file, it'll extract nicely to a folder in the same directory, and here we have it. Now normally you'll just be able to double click the energy sharing app here and it'll run just like any other program, but during this beta phase I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit more complicated so that we can debug any problems that might arise. So you'll see here in the folder there's a directory called model, and what I'll ask you is to go model and then run dev, and there's this crazy amount of files, but specifically down here is the run dev file, and this is the actual back-end model, all of that code that does all the calculations. This is that program, and I'm going to get you to double click on this first, and what it does is it's going to open it up in this terminal window, and you can ignore this but don't close it because it's the actual model running, and this will just be really useful. If any problems arise, we'll actually be able to see what happened. Okay, so without further ado, then we can double click on the energy sharing. So now we're in the energy sharing simulator, and we can click get started once we've admired the beautiful logos. And we have the choice of either the Luomi model, which is by myself and Naomi Stringer, or the apartment model by Mike Roberts. And in this first beta, we're just looking at the Luomi model. If you select the apartment model, it's still going to default to Luomi. Okay, so the idea with this program is that we can, on the left here, just move through these different options to set up and run our model. So the first thing to do is to have a look at load and solar data. So you can see over here in the load data we've already got some load files that have been imported into the program, and we've got a sample of these files in this folder. So as you can see, it's basically a CSV file, an Excel file with a timestamp in the leftmost column, and then a number of load profiles, so just their consumption at every half-hour period through the day. So this particular one's got 11 different loads in it, and we'll be able to assign these loads to different participants in our energy sharing network. So as long as you conform to this file format, you can upload any load and solar data you like. You can see that the solar profiles are exactly the same. So from here, you're able to select new load and solar profiles and import them into the program. Same with solar. And then this is where the magic happens. We start to configure our participants. So these are the various solar and load systems that are in our local energy sharing network. The first thing we need to do is tell it which of those load and solar files to use. So if we click on that button, we get the option to choose any of those imported load and solar profiles. So I'm going to choose load profile 6 because it's nice and short, and it's a good place to start. This area here shows the relative length of both of those data sets. So for example, if I choose load profiles 5, there's no crossover in these data sets. The solar data is from late February, whereas the load is early March. If we chose load profile, solar profile 3, we'd see that the simulation can only run from here to here. So there's a little bit of the solar data set that's not going to be run because there's no crossover in those dates. That's totally fine, and you can run those. I'm just going to select load profile 6 for demo purposes. So these are the same length, as you can see. Okay, so now we're going to start adding participants. You can call your participants whatever you want, just to keep track of them. I'll leave that as participant 1. You can select their tariff type. Under the Luomi model, you can have either a time of use tariff or a time of use and a block tariff on top of it. So I'm just going to select time of use tariff for simplicity here. We can now select this participant to have any one of those 11 load profiles from that original CSV file, right? So profile 1, we can go in here and select profile 1. Same with the solar data, so I'm just going to select profile 1. And we'll come back to this in 1 second, but what we can do is preview the data. And what you can see here is that while the load data is peaking at 12.5 kilowatts, the solar data seems to have been normalized. So we can fix this. If we want to give it, say, a 20 kilowatt system, we can scale that solar data by 20 just here. And if we view it again, okay, that looks a lot more sensible. The solar's kicking in relative to the load. So that's good. We'll leave that one there. And we can add another participant just for example, give them a time of use tariff as well. Give them load and solar profile 2. And you know, their solar looks a little high. I'm actually just going to scale that down a little bit. So that's a bit better. Okay. Now we'll move on to tariffs. In the Luomi model, you have access to retail tariffs, network tariffs, local solar, and central battery. And I'll go through each of these. Retail tariff is the tariff that's imposed by the retailer that's managing the system. What we can do is set the rate for the off-peak tariff, the shoulder tariff, and the peak tariff. And then we can modify the times at which these tariffs occur. So firstly, I'll show you changing the rate. So the off-peak tariff, that applies to this section and this section, we'll make it 20 cents instead, or 30 cents even. Additionally, we can change what time those tariffs kick in by dragging these sliders. This way we can configure pretty much any commonly used tariff in the Australian electricity market. You can also add a daily charge and a general solar feed-in tariff, which is charged on the energy exported from the whole system out to the grid. You can do the same thing for network tariffs. So we've got the options of TUOS, DUOS, and NUOS. You can configure these separately, or you can make them equal to each other. And just like before, you can change the times at which each of them kicks in. You can configure some additional tariffs for local solar. So this is when participant 1 would be selling electricity to participant 2, for example. You can set these to 0, or you can set, $1 a kilowatt hour or whatever you want. Same with the central battery. We've got two options here. Firstly, the charges for energy coming out of the central battery are in this top row. And then the payments made to participants in the system who are sending energy to the central battery. So local solar import into the central battery. This is what the participants get paid. Finally, we have central services. So in this instance, we've got a central battery for the Luomi model. So we can configure how many kilowatt hours it is, the maximum discharge, and the cycle efficiency. And the dispatch algorithm, although there's only one at the moment. Finally, the review page basically shows what we've configured. So these are the solar files and load profiles we've selected. we've got the list of participants and the battery stats. And now we can click Run Model. As you can see, it runs, and these are our results. Okay, so now we're on the results page, and we've got a few options for viewing the data. This is the revenue that the retailer's made. You can see it's going to zero at certain times when there's no load or there's excess solar. This is the participant bills, not super interesting with 2 participants, but it gets a lot more complex when you've got more participants in there. The total revenue for each participant, or total bills for each participant. The energy flows in the system between the participants, and the energy flows through the system, so when export and import are occurring. Additionally, you can hit the download button, which will give you access to all of the data from the simulation, and there's a lot of it for both models. Okay, well, welcome to the local energy sharing app. I'm really excited to have you trying it out, and I really look forward to your feedback. One last thing, please, if you do leave feedback, it'd be great to do it through GitHub, through the GitHub page for energy sharing. At the Issues tab. If you just open a new issue, then we can keep track of it and mark it done so you can see that we've acted on what you've flagged. Okay, great. Thank you very much.